Larry, as far as questions, if people have
Yeah.
questions, we put it in the chat.
Yeah, I think that's best to, they tell me I talk pretty fast for a Southern guy, so I'll take their word for it. So I'm just going to be running on and on. And so all you need to do is just flag me down. I've got my chat is open right here beside it so I can see it. So if somebody's got a question, they can put it there. Or I can see your smiling faces, or at least the few that we have on the screen now. So if you want to, just raise your hand. You're good, like good old fifth grade elementary school, and we'll take the questions. Generally, I've given this session hundreds of times, I bet, when people call us up and want more information on our services. As far as doing it on the writers conferences, probably, 20 plus times. Done it here at Philadelphia for 7 or 8 years, done it out in Colorado, done it down in Dallas at their conference there, did it in Southern California a year before last. So done a lot of these things, a couple here in Nashville. And it tends to be, unfortunately, a little bit more of a lecture than I would like, only because what I'm basically is telling people about this alternative way of doing things. So, so it tends to be more of a lecture than I'd like. It's not geared to be really more of an interactive, but the things that I say definitely can generate questions. If nothing else, I am going to try to finish up early. I think we've got till 11:30 or my time, 11:30 my time, 12:30 your time, or am I reading that right?
Let me look here.
11.
11:45. 11:45.
11:45 Eastern.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 10:45 my time.
Yes.
I'm in Nashville.
Right, and that'll be 9:45. 9:45 my time. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now, Larry, do you want them to wait to the end to ask questions?
If it's just kind of can you elaborate more on so and so kind of a thing, that'd be great. But if there is just a crushing question, if I've said something that you need immediate, you're just not getting what I'm saying, or something, or immediately need more impact on that, yeah, raise your hand. I can see everybody pretty clearly here. And if that doesn't get my attention, then put it in the chat room, and I'll definitely stop and field that question.
All right.
And of course, don't forget when we're ready to field the question, don't forget to take it off mute. Mute's down in the bottom left corner. All right, how are we doing? All right, I got 10:31 Eastern. All right, so we'll give it another 1 minute. Ed, where did I don't know if we ask you where you're from. Where are you from?
Talking to this Ed?
Yeah, Ed Hirsch.
Okay. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster, know it well. I used to work for Campbell Soup. I was director of marketing for Campbell Soup, right across the river in lovely downtown Camden.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we fly in, we'd have to fly into the Philadelphia area and that sort of thing. I think it's still there, but they tore down. They used to have the big soup can was their water tower.
Okay.
Years after I'd left Campbell's, I left Campbell's in 1987. That's when I got in the book business, when I joined Ingram. And my wife and I were on vacation, just had the TV running in the background, turned around, and there on the TV screen is the big Campbell's soup can collapsing. And after like 100 years, they finally decided to blow up the water tower, tear it down. But it was heart-wrenching watching that Campbell's soup can collapse. So, Ed, why don't you tell us real quickly, if we'll just give a minute or two if anybody else joins us, but this looks like our group, because I got 10:33 now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about writing wise, just 30 seconds, just a quick overview. Have you already written a book? Are you working on a book? What genre? Just a little quick synopsis of your writing history.
For me, you're talking to? I did author a book called Escaping the Pain of Offense, Empowered to Forgive from the Heart. It's a book on forgiveness. It came out of a 3-year research project that I did for my seminary degree.
Mhm.
And I, over the last decade, have blogged on a blogger site that I try to keep up my writing by forcing myself to at least post regularly there, at least once a month. That right now, that's regular for me. But
Did you
that's,
publish using a traditional publisher or self-published or hybrid?
I self-published.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Who did
actually
you-
had a negative experience with a company in 2010, and then I went back and just did everything from scratch again and came out with it a year later.
So you truly self-published.
I truly self-published.
Got it. Got it.
But I'm working on another project actually that I'm looking to publish soon, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. What are the options these days, and
Yeah.
you know,
We
how
get
I might
we
go
get a
about it.
lot of authors that we do about 100 books a year through our process, which I'm going to describe to you. I'd say about 10 or 20 of those are authors who used the traditional model and just weren't very happy with, the amount of their royalties and how much control they had, factors like that, and come over to independently publish their book or use hybrid publishing for their book. We've got one author who's done 13 books from us, but he's done a total of over 60 books. And all of those were traditional publishers before he discovered our methodology. And we get a lot of authors who have previously self-published and just not been very happy with how that all turned out, and come to us. And then,
And it's actually called independent.
I was going to go into that, but let me go ahead and start off with that because we actually created this process back in 2010. I was the president of Standard Publishing, the sixth largest Christian publisher in the world. Before that, I was Vice President Thomas Nelson, the largest Christian publisher in the world. So I had actually come into the industry with the wholesale distributor. I was Senior Vice President, Sales and Marketing for Ingram, which is the largest book distributor in the world. And you're very familiar, I'm sure, with Ingram. Was there for 12 years, headed out, started my own distribution company, which did contract distribution for publishers. And it was ultimately bought by a large English company. And that's when I went to work for traditional publishing. So I have a background in traditional publishing. I know the good side, I know the bad side to traditional publishing. And so when I stepped down as president of Standard in 2010, 11 years ago, I said, there's got to be a better mousetrap. There's got to be a more author-friendly way to do a book. And by hook or crook, we came up with a process. We call it custom publishing. So I'm going to refer to it as custom publishing. There are some handouts that are downloadable. There's one called Introduction to Custom Publishing that's going to just summarize all that we talk about today. And then there's a second one, very valuable document called The 4 Phases of Custom Publishing. And that actually breaks it down into the 4 steps involved in our process, gives you the process, the cost, the timing, everything. So I'd encourage you to download those documents on that. So when we first came out 11 years ago, the industry didn't quite know what to make of our model because we're not traditional publishing, we're not self-publishing. So at first they called it independent publishing. That really didn't work for 2 reasons. Number one, independent publishing can also be used to describe self-publishing. We are not self-publishing. I have a little Nerf baseball bat that I keep in my closet. And if any of our authors ever refer to what we do as self-publishing, we batter them about the head and shoulders until they vanquish that term from their vocabulary. Self-publishing does not have a good name and reputation in the industry. I'm sorry to say that, but go ask any buyer at Barnes & Noble, would you ever take a presentation on a self-published book? And their answer is no, never. I would never do that. Now, can a self-published book get into Barnes & Noble? Sure. The Shack, the #1 selling Christian book for the last 10 years, was self-published. But what had to happen, it wasn't in Barnes & Noble from day one. It had to build the momentum that William Paul Young built through just brilliant marketing until people were coming into Barnes & Noble demanding that book, and they had to put it on the shelf. So, self-publishing doesn't always have the best reputation. So we don't want them to use that term. So the industry called it independent publishing. Problem number one is independent publishing, though, can also describe self-publishing. If you look just here in this conference, you'll see several references. I saw there's one tomorrow, indie publishing, but it's about how to self-publish your book. So you can use it. So that proved to be problematic. Secondly, is that there's an entity in the industry called independent publishers. Independent publishers are just a small publishing company that's not owned by a New York conglomerate. Okay, so it got very confusing when you say independent publisher, publishing. Are you referring to, I'm going out to a mom and pop publishing company? So it got very confusing. So about 5 or 6 years ago, the industry came up with an alternative term, which is hybrid publishing. I love the term hybrid publishing. Hybrid means somewhere between two things, somewhere in the middle. And that's exactly where we are with our model, is we steal the best features from the traditional publishing model, steal the best features from self-publishing, what few there are, and then try to eliminate all the negatives associated with both of them. And so that's why the industry now is, and we've got competitors, there are other companies that have started doing what we do. We think we do it better than they do, but we do have competitors. So they lump all of us together under the term hybrid publishing. And our specific brand name, if you want to call it that, would be custom publishing. So with that, I'm going to go, host disabled participant screen sharing. Whoops, that doesn't look good. All right. Does anybody know why the host is disabled?
I didn't disable it. It was already disabled. You can share it now. I fixed it.
Yeah, Laura, if you can get I need to be able to share the presentation. Leona, do you want to, while we're waiting, would you like to unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself?
And Larry, you should be ready now.
I made you co-host, and I shared your screen. I made it so you could share your screen even if you did it.
All righty. Okay, give me just a second. Slideshow. Beginning. Okay, can everybody see the alternatives to traditional publishing?
Yes.
All right, there we go. Okay, we've got some others that have joined us. All right, didn't see you until now. My name is Larry Carpenter. I'm chairman and CEO of a company called Christian Book Services. We were the very first, what the industry now labels as hybrid publisher in the industry. And so that's what I'm going to really talk to you about, is an alternative. And we could actually have said alternative to traditional publishing and self-publishing, because I know that some of you may have already self-published a book or are looking at that model. And so we really offer an alternative to all of those. So what we're going to do is I've got now more pictures of people than I can see at any one time. So I was going to suggest that if you had a question, that you raise your hand or do something simple like that. But we also have the chat feature, although my chat has now disappeared from the side. So let me suggest this. If you have a question, unmute and try coming in, just grab my attention and we'll take that question. Otherwise, I'm going to try to allow some time at the end. We've got about an hour, but I'm going to allow 5 or 10 minutes for questions at the end, and we'll take those there. At last resort, let me give everybody my my email address, and feel free to email me after the presentation if you have any questions that didn't get answered during the presentation. So let me give that to you. It's very simple. It's Larry, Larry, at Christian Book Services. You'll see that's the name of our company. It's right there on the screen, .com. So it's Christian Book Singular Services Plural.com. And just feel free to email me afterwards. What we can do, if you're interested in the process, is we'll set up a a free informational session. We'll get on the phone, learn more about you, learn more about your book, and then you can make a decision as to whether this is a good way to perhaps get your book published. So I gave everybody some background. I was vice president of Thomas Nelson, the largest Christian publisher in the world. After that, I was president of Standard Publishing, which is the 6th largest Christian publisher in the world. So I come from a traditional publishing background, but that does not stop me from pointing out to you some of the pluses and minuses of the traditional publishing model, and to be able to tell you a little bit more about it. So let me start off by kind of giving you the options that are available to you as an author to get your book published. The first option is, of course, using an established publisher. You got large publishers like Thomas Nelson, Zondervan, Tyndale, etc. Small independent publishers that maybe specialize in children's books or something like that. And then niche publishers that are totally devoted, that only do one particular niche or one particular type of publisher. And these are generally called traditional publishers or established publishers. That is the model that they use. Thomas Nelson's been doing it since 1788, over 240 years now. So, and most of the big guys have been doing it for over 100 years. Next would be self-published. And again, maybe you might be familiar with self-publishing. Self-publishing goes back actually to the 1940s. It had a not so great reputation. It was known as vanity publishing. But basically, if you had enough money, you could bypass the traditional publisher and get your book published. You had to do all of the efforts yourself, though. It wasn't until the internet was established that you really started to see the self-publishing companies like Amazon Create Space, Author House, Zulon, owned by Salem Communications, is the largest Christian self-publishing company. And if you go to the internet and put in self-publishing, hundreds of companies will come up. The benefit of those companies is previously you had to do everything yourself. Ed was telling earlier that he truly self-published the book, which meant he had to go find an editor online. He had to go find somebody to lay out the book, somebody to proofread the book. He had to go find a printer, et cetera, go through all the steps himself. Nowadays, it is very convenient. You go to Amazon Create Space or Zulon, and they sell you a package that includes these various different steps in creating a product. And so now most everybody uses these internet companies now when they want to self-publish a book. What I'm going to present to you is, as the alternative, is what is called custom publishing. Hopefully everybody heard my introduction that the industry kind of wrestled with what to call this process when we first started it 11 years ago, and they've now pretty much standardized on the term hybrid publishing. So you'll hear that term to describe all of the companies that do what we do. Our particular brand name, trademark brand name, is custom publishing. So what are the pros of using an established traditional publisher? Number one answer, trust me, I saw it in all the years I worked for a traditional publisher. The number one answer is ego. If you ask somebody, why did you want to get your book published by a traditional publisher like Thomas Nelson, they'll never say it was due to ego. But folks, let me tell you, it feels awful good to be able to say, hey, my publisher is Thomas Nelson. You need to talk to them. All right. Why? Because an entity that's been doing this for a real long time took a look at your book and said, this is a really good book. We want to get involved. All right. So ego is the number one reason. Number two, somebody else does the heavy lifting. You don't have to find your own editor, designer, printer. Thomas Nelson does all of that for you. Somebody else takes the risk. In a traditional publishing model, you as an author, you have to find a literary agent, you have to get approval, you have to get a signed contract, but then your financial involvement stops, other than marketing. Okay, other than marketing, your financial involvement. Thomas Nelson is going to pay to get the book edited, get the cover designed, get the interior layout, get the book printed. They're going to assume all of the financial risk. That's a big benefit for an author. Quality of books is assured. The bookstores know that if a book is coming from Thomas Nelson, it's going to be good quality. They know it's going to be well edited, well vetted, well researched. The cover is going to be good. It's going to have a good sales force that's selling it. It's relatively easy to order the book from them. So the quality is assured. Let me stun you perhaps with a statistic. Thomas Nelson, we were the best at it 60% of our books lost money. Let me say that again. 60% of our books lost money. Only 40% of our books made a profit. Actually, an identical statistic to what goes on in the movie industry. Hey, folks, this is the entertainment business. It's a risky business. And so at Thomas Nelson, my job was to make enough money on those 40% of books to pay for the 60% that lost money. So even with the best quality available, it's not a done deal that the book is going to be successful. But your odds of success are very good because you got a high quality company behind you. You may get some marketing assistance. When I'm doing this in front of a group and not on a computer, one of the first questions I ask is, why would you want to use a traditional publisher? Nobody says ego, but the number one answer I always get is because they're going to help me marketing the book. Folks, I was the vice president of marketing for the largest Christian publisher in the world. The amount of money that a traditional publisher is going to spend on a brand new author is diddly, basically nothing. All right, I had a huge budget. The last book I did with Max Lucado had a budget of $795,000, but we sold 1.4 million copies in the first year. Our attitude towards a brand new author was they're going to really sink or swim on their own. And what we were going to rely on is their platform. If you've never heard that word before, you'll hear it a lot in conferences like this. Platform. They want to bring on an author has a huge platform who can go out there and build awareness for the book and sell books. And then they watch like whack-a-mole to see who pops up, and that's who they're going to do the second book with. And that's how it works. Our marketing assistance was basically I had 6 publicists that reported to me. Each one was juggling about 20 books at the same time. And they would do a press release, and they would run off about 100 galley copies. They would send it out to the low-hanging fruit as far as the marketing was concerned, and that's the level of marketing that they would do. All the rest had to be done by the author. So whichever one you go with, traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, or self-publishing, you as the author bear the primary responsibility for building demand for your book, awareness and demand. Finally, low out-of-pocket expense. Why? Go back up to number 3. They're the ones putting up the money, so your out-of-pocket is very low. You know, J.K. Rowling was homeless when she wrote Harry Potter. She didn't have to worry about coming up with the money to publish her book because after getting rejected by 25 different publishers, Bloomsbury in the UK picked her up and paid to launch her book. So that's definitely a benefit. However, you need to know that there are some negatives associated with using an established traditional publisher. Number one is loss of control. All right, this may astound you, but when you sign a contract with Thomas Nelson, it says that you don't get to determine the title of the book. You don't get to determine what the cover looks like. You don't get to determine how the book is edited. You don't get to determine how the book is laid out. You don't get to determine how many copies are printed, when the book comes out, when the book is reprinted. All of those decisions are made by the publisher. And people are astounded by that. They say, how can they have that much power? Why? Goes back to the line from the movie Jerry Maguire, and you all know it before I say it, show me the money. They're the ones that are putting up the money to fund that book, and in return for that, they demand complete control over that process so that they can maximize that risk that they're taking. Here's the other slap in the face. When you publish with a traditional publisher, guess who owns the intellectual property? Guess who owns the intellectual rights? And I'm not just talking about the rights to the book. I'm talking the audio rights, the ebook rights, the international translation rights, the serial rights, the movie rights, the television rights. Guess who owns them? I'll give you a hint. It's not you. The publisher owns all the intellectual rights, and publishers spend years trying to buy their intellectual rights back from their publisher. So obviously you don't have to be a command and control type A personality to get rubbed the wrong way by the fact that the title that you want your book to be. Let me give you one other astounding statistic. We once researched it, actually as a literary agent that researched it for us. Of all the titles that Thomas Nelson picked up from first-time authors, we changed the title 95% of the time. In other words, you're virtually guaranteed that the title of your book will not be what you want it to be. That's why on your proposal, it doesn't say title, it says working title. And it's for that very reason. Long time to market takes an established publisher about 1 year from the point where they have a finished manuscript before your book shows up on the shelf. But remember, you had to get a literary agent. If you liberally assume you can do that in 6 months, and you'll talk to people there at the conference who've been trying for years to get a literary agent. It's very difficult to do. But let's say liberally that you get a literary agent in 6 months, and then they're able to place your project in 6 months. That's another year. It's going to take 2 years before your book shows up on the best case scenario, 2 years before your book shows up on the shelf. Not every author wants to wait that long. Low profitability. There's a rumor in the industry that royalties, and of course that's how you get paid is royalties, that royalties are about $1 a book. Yes, if your name is Max Lucado or Beth Moore or J.K. Rowling, you're making at least $1 a book. But basically the way the royalty works is it's a percentage, and it averages for a first-time author at Thomas Nelson, it averaged for us between 8 and 12%. So let's just say 10%, because that's pretty much average number. People say, well, Larry, my book is, got a $16 price tag. So you're telling me I make 10% of that, or $1.60? No, Thomas Nelson isn't going to pay you on money that they don't earn. They don't sell it for $16. Barnes & Noble, Amazon sell it for $16. They bought it at half price from Thomas Nelson, or half of 16 is $8. So, okay, so 10% of $8 is 80 cents. I'm going to make 80 cents. No, remember, you had to have a literary agent. How much does a literary agent make? 15% of everything that you earn. So if you're getting a royalty of 80 cents and in reality only getting 85%, we just took out our 15%, 85% of 80 cents is 68 cents. Our average royalty on an adult trade book at Thomas Nelson was 68 cents a book. On a children's book, it's even lower because the price tag is lower, about 50 to 55 cents a book is what you make. You got to sell a ton of books at 68 cents each in order to make any money. And that's why profitability. Give you one more astounding statistic. According to the Authors Guild, which is the trade association of published authors, these are the successful ones. The percentage of published authors that live below the federal poverty level is 71%. 7 out of every 10 authors make less than $14,000 a year. So, it's tough business. Now, about right now, you're probably getting depressed. Hold that thought, okay? Because that's why we launched the new model that we did. All right. So low profitability is an issue. Got to have a literary agent, as we've already mentioned. That's tough to do. Somebody once researched that. The odds of an author getting a literary agent are about 1 out of 1,000. Okay, just let that percolate for just a minute. About 1 out of 1,000. And even if you get a literary agent, very, very tough to land a contract. Okay, well, let's look at self-publishing, because that was the option that sprung up. All right, and that was supposed to solve all of these problems. Let's look at the pluses. Very convenient. You can go right to Amazon Create Space's website, sign up, buy the package. Very, very convenient to do. They do the heavy lifting. Again, as I said, they're the ones that are going to edit the book. Now, the quality of that editing may not be what you want, but at least they're going to, if you buy the right package. If you go and get the $999 introductory package, your book will not even be edited. Okay, your book will come out with typos and punctuation errors, grammatical errors. So bear that in mind if you're tempted by that $9.99 promotional price that they run all the time. All right, you have control over your book. You can tell them, here's the image I want to use for my cover, and you get to do that. You determine what level of editing you want to have happen with your book. Now, they don't offer ghostwriting. They don't offer content editing, but at least you can get copy editing, and you can get proofreading. So you have some greater level of control as far as your book is concerned. You can get some marketing support, but you have to pay extra. And trust me, folks, it's the marketing is kind of suspect. Let me just point out the second largest self-publishing company in the world is currently under federal indictment for fraud. And if you go to the internet, I'm not going to mention their name, but it's not hard to figure out who's the second largest one in the world. And you will, if you Google their name, you'll see it all come up, the federal indictment for fraud. And it's all based on these marketing packages that they sell to unsuspecting authors. And you will finally get set up at the distributors. Getting your book set up with the wholesale distributors is critical. You need to have your book carried by Ingram, Baker and Taylor, and because it's a religious book, a company called Anchor, which is right there in the great state of Pennsylvania. All right, so you got to have your book set up with the distributor. And if you self-publish your book, it's tough to do. But if you get it through one of these organizations, at minimum, they will get your book set up at the major distributors. Now, what does that mean? That means your book is one of the 14 million books that Ingram carries. Maybe you get lucky and somebody stumbles over it, but maybe not. What you need is somebody who's actually going to go into the bookstore and tell them about your book. You need to have a sales force behind your book. And all of the major traditional publishers, Thomas Nelson's got like 20, 22 people. When I left, they had about 20 people. That's their sales force. And they actually go into the bookstores and sell the books that are being published by Thomas Nelson. All right. You need to have that level of sales. All right. And we'll talk about whether you get it or not. All right, here are the negatives, though, associated with self-publishing. Number one, the lower price packages have the look and feel of vanity publishing. I'm sure every one of you has looked at a book and thought, gee, that looks self-published, okay? And that's what people are doing. The person who's designing your cover is 22 years old, fresh out of design school, working the first job they've ever worked in their life. They've never worked for a traditional publisher, making about 12 bucks an hour and deliriously happy that they're the only person in their graduating class who has a job. Why does Amazon create space? Hire that person because they're cheap. The amount of money that Amazon or any of the other companies can charge you for your book is capped. It's right there on their website. This package is $3,000. So their revenue is $3,000. How do they maximize their profit? You don't have to have an economics degree to know that if this is your revenue, your profit is basically what your expenses are. So their goal is to keep their expenses as low as possible. So they hire inexperienced people, and that person is cranking out 8 covers a day. That's what is expected of them. You get very few copies of your book. With some of these self-publishing companies, you may get 1 to 10 copies. Now, what does that say about their confidence that your book's going to hit the New York Times bestseller list if they're only going to print 10 copies? Most of them, Westbow and ones like that, you get normally about 100 copies. Again, if they're only going to print 100 copies of your book, what does that say about their confidence in that book being a good commercially successful book? And additional books are very expensive. For them, once they've got you, it's like the Remington razor analogy. Remington razor blades at the turn of the last century discovered that if they got the razor into your hands, the only place they could get the blade was from them. Okay, you ever wonder why razor blades are so expensive? They practically give you the razor for free. Now you're addicted. You can only put a Schick razor blade in a Schick razor. And then they charge you, whatever they charge nowadays, 30 bucks for a couple of razor blades. That's where they make their money. These folks use the same strategy, okay? Because you're committed to them. You can only order your book from them. I have seen, most of them, you can get your book for $3 to $4. Cost them less than $2 to print it, but you can get it from them for $3 to $4. But I've seen horror stories where they charge up to $6 to $8 for you to order a copy of your book. This is the most important thing. You get virtually no sales or distribution assistance. None of the self-publishing companies have a sales force. Why? Okay, there's a company called Zulon. The founder was a guy named Tom Freiling. When it came time for Tom to publish his own book, he did a book called The Faith of George W. Bush. Might have heard about it. It hit number 6 on the New York Times bestseller list. Tom did not publish his book from Zulon. I get a call out of the blue from Tom. I'd known Tom from other occupations. And Tom said, Larry, I'd like for you to do my book. I said, Tom, you own Zulon, the largest Christian self-publishing company in the world. Why would you want me to do your book? He said, because we have no sales force. Tom published that year 3,500 sales books. He said, I'm basically the largest Christian publisher in the world, but he can't get an appointment with Barnes and Noble. Why? How would you like to be the Barnes and Noble buyer for the religion category? Get a call from a guy that says, hey, would you like for me to, can I set up an appointment to come in and sell you my 3,500 self-published books? Can you imagine their sense of elation? That sales call would take about a week, and they're going to see a whole lot of really not very good self-published books. So he knew he can't get an appointment with the chains and the bookstores, so he doesn't even try. None of them have a sales force. Go to the Amazon website or Westbow or anybody else and look on there to see if you see any mention of any bookstore that they're going to go sell your book to. And that's the number one problem with the self-publishing model. Out-of-pocket expenses can be very high. You know, you can take the $9.99, but you really don't get anything with that introductory package. Most of them average between $3,000 to $5,000, but there are horror stories out there where companies are charging up to $15,000 to self-publish books. They tend to prey on wealthy widows and other people who want to get their book published. So be very careful with that. So at last, we're to custom publishing. You're probably severely depressed by now. I apologize for that, but there is hope on the horizon. So what I set out to do in 2010, when I stepped down as president of the 6th largest Christian publisher, was I said, we want to give the author the quality, the sales, and the distribution infrastructure of traditional publishing, but swing the pendulum of control and profitability back to the author. That's our mission statement. How do we do that? Well, basically, you could say that you're self-publishing your book. You could use that terminology. We don't like our authors to use it because, again, as I said, they're in the industry, there's something called the self-publishing stigma, okay? And it's associated with self-publishing books. They don't always have the best reputation in the world. Are there books that have become successful? I mentioned just a minute ago that The Shack, #1 selling Christian book, was self-published. Let me astound you here. The #1 selling book over the last decades is a little ditty called 50 Shades of Grey. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess none of you have read it, but that book that has now sold over 150 million copies was self-published. So they know that there's some good books there that are self-published, but no buyer is going to wade through 90 really bad books to try to find the 10 that are good. So that, you know, they just dismiss them out of hand, and that becomes what we call the self-publishing stigma. All right. So, you know, you could technically say you're self-publishing it because you're putting up the funds to pay for the production and the printing, but we never use that term self-publishing to describe what we do. Next, you have the maximum level of control. What you do in hybrid publishing, or our specific process, custom publishing, is that, you know, you work with us. We assign a designer to work with you on the cover design. You're now working directly with that person. You're an email or a phone call away from your designer. Same thing for your editor. When I was at Thomas Nelson, if an author called me up and said, Larry, I'd like to talk to the person who's editing my book, you know, so we can talk about how to get it edited, I would have started laughing hysterically and rolling around on the floor. If any of you have ever published a book with a traditional publisher, you know you're not allowed to talk to that editor. Thomas Nelson's attitude is, hey, you're the one that got us in this mess. You're the one that turned in the manuscript that we're now having to edit. You're the last person in the world we want to talk to our copy editor. All right, so you're not allowed to do that. With us, you work one-on-one, hand in glove with your cover designer, with your content editor, your ghostwriter, your copy editor, your proofreader, whoever is working on your book. And very importantly, you tell us which services you need. If you come to us and say, hey, my next door neighbor is a graphic designer and she's agreed to do my cover for free, can she do that? Yep, you just saved yourself $700, okay? Because that's what it costs our cover designer to do a cover. You've now found a way to do that. So as long as that designer is skilled with books, you know, some people say, well, hey, my 12-year-old is great with crayons and he's going to do my cover. Okay, that's not going to work so well. But, you know, if you have somebody who is an experienced copy editor, We love it when you come to us and say, hey, here's one less thing you got to worry about, Larry. I've already got the copy editor. So what we do is we do an a la carte basis. We open up to you the full range of services that we offer. We do all the basics for the book, including cover design, interior layout, all the editing, all the printing. But we also can help you get your books translated into Spanish. We can help you get your ebook done. We can help you do your audio book. We can help you negotiate the foreign translation rights to your book. We offer all of these services. You, as the author, tell us what services you need to provide, and we use that to construct the budget for your book. We have no packages, so there is no such thing as a package. Product quality is high, as you're basically getting your book done by industry veterans. Unlike the self-service guys who hire that 22-year-old person to do the cover, I did a survey, and this goes back about 5 years ago. I got curious and I asked the cover designers that we use. The average one had been doing this for over 18 years. So now we're using the same people, so that average would now be 23, 24 years, over 2 decades, the people that we're using. Now, where did these come from? When I was at Thomas Nelson, people assumed that we designed all the covers in-house. No. Dirty little secret is we only designed about 20% of our covers in-house. We did the covers for Max Lucado, Beth Moore, Chuck Swindoll, Charles Stanley. Why? We knew what they liked. For a brand new author, your odds were about 80% that we would go outside the company to a freelance designer like DesignWorks, Cochelle Peterson, Suzanne Lawing and Associates, Adept Content Solutions. That's who we would farm that project out to get your cover design. So when I set up my company 11 years ago, what did I do? I called Lori Martinsek at Adept Content Solutions. I called Suzanne Lawing. I called Debbie Manning-Shepherd. I said, will you do these covers for us? And the same designers that charged me $1,000 to do my cover at Nelson does my cover for my authors for $700. Why? Because they don't have all the overhead and everything they had when they dealt directly with Thomas Nelson. They're basically doing this in the comfort of their own home at night. They're moonlighting, if you want to put it that way. All right, so we get the best people in the industry, use the same printers that Nelson and Zondervan use. We don't, try not to do print on demand and the things that the self-publishing guys do, but we use the best printers in the industry, folks like Bang and Warzala and Color House Graphics and Bethany, et cetera, et cetera. Next, our books are distributed by Ingram. Ingram distributes as a wholesale distributor, as the largest wholesale distributor in the world. Ingram distributes books from over 14,000 publishers, including Random House, Simon Schuster, HarperCollins, Thomas Nelson, etc. But does Ingram go out and sell those books to the bookstore? No. Why? Because Random House has their own sales force. Random House has the largest sales force in the industry. They have 27 people. You go right straight to their corporate annual report and see that they have 27 salespeople going out 3 times a year, generating sales on their books. So Ingram doesn't have to sell them. Out of those 14,000, though, Ingram has a division called Ingram Publisher Services. There are only 130 publishers in that division. We're one of them. We are actually the largest Christian distributor or Christian publisher exclusively distributed by Ingram. What this means is their 45 salespeople go out, hit the streets 3 times a year, selling our books into over 2,000 bookstores, and that includes Christian and secular bookstores around the country. Now, remember I said the largest publisher sales force was Random House with 27 people? Ingram's sales force is twice as large as the largest publisher sales organization in the world. Not only do those 45 people sell those books all over the United States, but Ingram has 8 sales offices around the world. See if I can do this. Canada, Brazil, United Kingdom, South Africa, China, India, and Australia. I think I got everybody. From those 8 sales offices, Ingram sells your books into 54 countries around the world. Nobody, Random House's international sales efforts pale in comparison to Ingram's sales efforts around the world. So now you've got that infrastructure in place to go out and sell your book into the bookstores. Time to market is short. We can do a book in as little as 3 months if an author is really in a hurry. We would prefer to do it more like 6 months, and you probably would too. So you can move at a more leisurely pace. I've got one author, she's been working on her book for 2 years now. But the important point, she's not on our timetable. If she was doing that book with Nelson, they would be beating on her saying, where's your manuscript? Come on, we're on a deadline. We got to do. We don't do that. We're on your timetable. If you want to take your time and take 2 years to write your book, that's cool with us. We're fine for that. Very, very flexible. Out-of-pocket costs are much more reasonable. All right. Average cost to design the cover, lay out the interior, do the copy edit for the book, get your ISBN, get your book copyrighted, and pay us our fee is about $3,000. Remember I said that the average self-publishing project is about $3,000? We actually custom publish your book for about the same price that you would spend with the self-publishing company. And yet look at the difference. They're using the 22-year-old designer. We're using the 23 years experience designer to work on their book. They're print on demand your book and charging you $4 for it. We're doing offset printing and charging you about $2 if it's a traditional adult book. All right. And then the final benefit, they have no sales force. We have their sales force. So for the same price, you're getting so much more benefit. All right. Then we've got to print the book though. If you do want to print 100 books, we do have to use print on demand. You can't get on an offset printing press unless you print at least 1,000 books. Why? Offset printing press, that's where they etch your book into metal plates and this big printing press prints it. No printer is going to go to the time and trouble to etch those plates and set up this huge piece of equipment that's about as big as your house. Nobody's going to go to all that trouble for less than 1,000 books. So if we do print 100 books, we do use print on demand. Who do we get to print it? Ingram. Ingram is the largest print on demand company in the world for their division called Lightning Source. Okay. So, print on books. What are we looking at for an adult trade book? Somewhere around 150 to 200 pages, about $350 a book or $350. So very, very reasonable to print a small print run. 500 books, still having to use print on demand, but we're getting some economies of scale. That's going to run you about $1,700. If you want to print 1,000 books, we're now getting print quotes on an adult trade book, black and white interior, color cover, somewhere between $2 and $2.25 a book. So I'm going to use the high-end estimate, about $2,250 to print your book. All right. Total project then runs approximately $3,300 to $6,000. All right, $3,300 if you did just the basics. And again, remember, if you said to me, I've got somebody to do your cover, that $3,000 goes down by the $700 that we were charging to do the cover. You're now paying us $2,300 to produce your book. All right, and then the level of books that you want is what would add to that. So somewhere between $3,300 and $6,000 versus the $15,000 that you can pay for these premium plans for these self-publishing companies. After the books are printed, you get advice on marketing support. Remember what I told you, that you're going to be primarily responsible for the consumer marketing of your book. There are two types of marketing. There's trade marketing and consumer marketing. Trade marketing is getting the word out about your book to the trade. Who are the trade? They're the people that sell your book. It's the bookstores. It's Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Hastings, Mardell, and thousands of mom and pop bookstores around the world. So who handles your trade marketing? Ingram. That's those 45 sales reps that are out there armed with catalogs and websites and in-store visits that they make. Ingram presents your book in store to over 200 bookstore buyers around the country. All right. What do you get for the same amount of money from the self-publishing companies? Nothing. They don't have a sales force. All right. So we're doing the trade marketing for you, but now you're doing your consumer marketing. All right. What we do though is we advise you on how to do it. If you need a publicist, we can help you get a publicist. If you need help designing your website, we do that for you. If you need help getting your book onto a service called NetGalley, which is what the publicist has to use to get a digital copy of your book into the hands of thousands of publicists, librarians, academics around the world, we help you get onto NetGalley. Now, are you paying for this? Yes. You know, if you say, Larry, I need a publicist, we help line you up with one of the best publicists in the company, who, by the way, we have negotiated reduced prices for them. Okay. That's another part of the service. Every one of these resources that we recommend to you, we've negotiated discounts in return for us providing that referral to that company. All right. So yes, you'd have to pay for that publicist out of your own pocket. But again, if you self-published the book and hired a publicist, you'd still have to pay for them out of the pocket, but at the higher rate. Okay. Because we've been able to negotiate that for you. Our clients receive then a monthly report on the sales activity and a check each month for their sales proceeds. Now, you do have to wait 120 days. All right. Why do you have to wait 120 days for your first report and your check? Because Ingram has the same selling terms as every other publisher. The bookstore has 90 days after they buy a book. They have 90 days to pay the publisher or pay Ingram. So Ingram gets paid around day 100. They then send a large check over to our company, and they send all the data. We take about a week. We have over 600 books that we publish. We have over 300 authors. So we're preparing all of these reports. And so it takes us a bit to do that. So there's a lag time before you get that first check of 120 days. Now, people say, oh my gosh, I got to wait 120 days. Publisher royalties are paid every 6 months. You have to wait 180 days. And if you got an advance, remember that's an advance on your royalty. Your royalty for your first 6 months of sales aren't going to you. They're simply paying back the advance. This is basically a loan. It's like a pawn shop. Okay, that advance. Oh my goodness, they're paying me $2,000 advance to do my book. They're paying me that money to do my book. No, they're giving you a loan of $2,000 as an advance on your royalties. And so when your royalties start to come into that publishing house, you don't get a check. That is simply reimbursing them for that advance that they paid you. So the average author, if they get a check, doesn't get one until after the first year. Why? Because all of those royalties went to pay back that advance. All right. With us, you start getting, there are no royalties. Okay. There is no publisher to pay off. All right. So you get your first check in 120 days. And unlike the royalties that you only get every 6 months, you get a check and a report every month after that. And if you want additional detail, try getting from a publisher, hey, who bought my book? Can you give me a list of the bookstores that bought my book? No, you can't get that from a publisher. With us, you email me, hey guys, can you send me a sales by account report? We can send you a list of every single bookstore that has bought your book over the life of your book. Okay. Very helpful if you're trying to promote the book and see what's working and what's not working in your marketing. Very helpful to know who bought your book. And additional books can be printed at or below the original price. So in other words, roughly $2 to $3 per book, as we've covered. So when it comes time to reprint your book, we don't do that Gillette razor blade strategy. Oh, he or she can only get their book from us. Let's go raise the price. No, you get your reprint for basically the same price that you paid for the original print run. All right. Okay, additional services. As I mentioned, we can do an ebook version. We have to get it converted over into a format called EPUB, and we have to pay the converter $300 for the average book. Now, with a children's book with lots of photographs and illustrations, could be more. But for an average adult trade book, 150 to 200 black and white pages, cost about $300 to convert it. Once we have it, we set it up at no additional cost. That's all included. Remember that $3,000 where I said that it cost about $3,000 for average project? $1,000 of that, people say, well, what do you make, Larry? What's your profit? You're paying us a project management fee of $1,000. Okay. But that $1,000 covers everything we do. If you come back later and say, I want to do an ebook, you've already paid us. So we're doing all the labor of setting that book up on Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble, The Nook, Kobo, Google, Scribd, deepershopping.com, and about 20 other websites you've never heard of. we do that at no additional cost. So the only thing you're paying for the ebook is the $300 to get it converted. As I said, we can also help you get your book translated into Spanish. We translated books into French, Russian, Arabic, all over the board. We can produce your audiobook. We can help guide you through that. Audiobooks are expensive if you have to use a narrator. If you get a narrator to narrate your book, you're looking at about $2,000. But if you narrate the book yourself, if you have access to an editing studio, okay, and a lot of people have it, go find a 15-year-old kid that's uploading content to YouTube. They have everything that you need, okay, and they can do it for you. So creating an audiobook, if you read it yourself, can be dirt cheap. How much do we charge you to upload it to the audiobook companies? Audible, Apple iTunes? Nothing. That's all included in that $1,000 that you paid us up front. We can display your book at the trade shows. The huge Christian retail show is coming up in St. Louis in August. We'll be there with a booth. We have about 20 of our authors that are coming in from around the country that are coming in fact, the world. We've got one that's coming all the way from Africa to be in our booth, to do author signings, meet and greet, and bond with these hundreds of Christian bookstore owners and buyers that'll be there at the show. We run ads in Christian Retailing and Publishers Weekly. Those are the two big trade publications. An ad in Publishers Weekly, if you got it, would cost you about $3,000 a page. None of my authors can afford to do that. What we do is we buy a 2-page spread, so we get a discount, and then we open it up to our authors. Our authors are now able to get an ad in Publishers Weekly for only about $400. So that's a real benefit for them. And ads in major retailer catalogs. If you go out into Christian bookstores, the largest ones are either a member of the Parable Marketing Group or the Months Marketing Group. Those marketing groups do those Christmas catalogs. They do the Easter catalogs. They do the catalogs that are used in the bookstores that enable them to compete with the Barnes and Nobles of the world. Okay. We're able to get your book into those Christmas catalogs and whatnot to get your book out in front of hundreds of thousands of Christian consumers. All right, I've got, looks like we got about 20 minutes. No, I'm sorry, 10:45 for me, 10:26. We got about 10 minutes. So I'm not going to go through the phase itself. I've pretty much covered them. The consulting is a 3-hour phase where we go through, we help you with your marketing strategy. We talk about your book, we get your print quotes, everything that we need to do. All right, the consulting phase is $300. When you sign a contract with us, that's all you send us, either between $200 and $300. That gets you started. If after this consulting phase, and you've paid now, say $200 for it, you're not happy with what you're getting, you can completely pull out of the project. Unlike the self-publishing companies, if you sign up for that $3,000 package before you can get started, you have to send them a check for $3,000. And if you start to get cold feet and realize the person you're talking to doesn't really know a whole lot about publishing and you try to pull out, good luck getting your $3,000 back. With us, your initial commitment for this first phase is only $200 and you can pull out of the project if you like. Production, you'll see, you'll see the different things that we do. Printing, you'll see there the reference to offset printing for 1,000 books or more, print on demand if it's less than 1,000. And then finally, the sales and distribution, and we pretty much talked about that, different things that we do. All right, there you have our websites. Christian Book Services is our overall parent company. Carpenter Son is our Christian publishing imprint. Clovercroft is our general imprint. I have Christians who say, Larry, I'm a Christian, but my book is not a Christian book. It needs to go into the finance section or the management or the marketing, or I did a cookbook, and we can help you there. And we have a division called Clovercroft that can do your general topic books. All right, that actually concludes my presentation. Looks like we've got a little less than 10 minutes. So if somebody wants to unmute and ask me a question, I can do that for the next 7 or 8 minutes.
Hi, thank you very much for all of what you've been sharing. My name's Lynn, and I've written a children's book, It's a
Uh-huh.
picture book. I've never done anything like this before. I have no idea, how to do this. I don't know. I don't know what your prices would be for picture books
Yeah.
and what all that would include.
Unfortunately, children's picture books are the least profitable books for the author. I'll never understand it. They're the most expensive books to produce. Why? You got to have an illustrator. You don't need an illustrator for a novel or an adult trade book, nonfiction, but with a children's book, generally you need an illustrator. Now, if you get lucky, we've got books where the author illustrated their own book. We've got others where relatives or neighbors or friends or people they go to church with have agreed to do it. But if you have to go out and sign a good quality illustrator, which we help you find, we actually email you portfolios and you can say, okay, I like this one, and we'll connect you, get a price quote. But you're looking, for the average 32-page children's picture book, you're looking at somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500. They charge about $1 per page. And out of this 32 pages, you're going to generally have about 25 that are illustrated. So right there, you'd be 2,500. So we help you keep those costs low, but you still are battling the fact that on top of the $3,000 you're paying us, you're having to pay somebody to illustrate your book. Secondly, children's picture books are more expensive to print. Why? They're probably hardcover, although we do a lot of soft covers, and it's a good way to keep our costs low for our authors, but most of them are still hardcover. Secondly, they're color. Color printing is more expensive than black and white. So unfortunately, your cost to produce children's picture books, and we do a lot of them. We do about 20 children's picture books a year. If you go to these two sites, you will see covers and interiors for the books that we have done. So you've got the highest production cost, but unfortunately, the prices are lower. I've never figured out why a black and white adult trade book averages $14.99, but children's picture books, if you go out into the store, are generally $12.99 or $13.99. So you get less money. So, I just want to make sure you have your eyes open. We can help you with that book. Just connect with us with that website, through the website, or my email address, larry@christianbookservices.com, and we can set up an appointment to talk about your book. All right, who's
Thank you.
next? Got about 5 minutes.
Hi, this is Nikki.
Hey, Nikki.
Hey, so I read your write-up,
Uh-huh.
and you said that Christian memoirs are not very easily sold, which is what I am writing. And
Yeah.
just wanted to hear some more thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. The first thing when somebody has survived cancer or a horrific car wreck or abuse as a child or whatnot, people say, well, you should write a book. Here's the problem. People have all kinds of problems. They have their own abuse problems. They have their own cancer issues and whatnot. Really, the last thing they want to do is read a book about somebody else who has that same problem. So it's a very tough sell. Now, if they're a celebrity, sure, celebrity memoirs are one of the best-selling categories in a bookstore. But just a person off the street, unless they've done something that nobody else has done. When Krakauer wrote the book, I think it's called Into the Mist, but how this guy, climbed to the top of Mount Everest. He did something. His memoir was something that nobody else had done like he had done, and people are interested. So what we do with memoirs, we can still do a memoir. And many people, like a pastor, might have a megachurch with 10,000 people. That's the platform that I talked about early. I've got one author who sold over 8,000 copies of her book. I bet we sold 100 through bookstores. She goes around. She's president of the largest Christian adoption agency. In fact, she came to us through the Philadelphia Christian Writers Conference many years ago. All right. And she sold a ton of books, but she sells them at her presentations. And she gets about 100 speeches a year. And so she's got a built-in market for your book. If you've got a built-in market and a lot of followers, then your memoir will probably sell. Okay. If not, what you need to do is turn your memoir into a self-help book, believe it or not, because we did a book. We're doing a book now that's about to come out on cancer. She tells her story because she has to tell it, but the book is chock full of resources, websites people can go if they have cancer and things like that. And our pre-sales are really strong. Nobody's ever heard of the author, but the fact that it's a good manual for how to deal with that issue, we're going to sell some books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that
Okay.
would be part of that first strategic discussion is, and again, you won't have this discussion with the self-publisher. They'll just say, send me the manuscript. We'll turn it into a book. They're not going to talk about strategy. That's what we do in that consulting session. We talk about what's the best format for your book, what's the best genre, where's the best place to try to get it into the bookstore, what's the best price, what's the best format, should it be hardcover, softcover. So we're going to launch your book. Remember, I started out at somebody on here, I was telling them I work for Campbell Soup. If we launched a new product, we would strategize it to death before we do it. We didn't just throw products out there. That's the way we approach your book. We're going up against some really good competitors. Thomas Nelson has been doing this for many, many years. Okay. I'm sorry, I was shortchanging this. We got about 10 minutes. All right. So Thomas Nelson has been doing this for 240 years. They're really good. I was talking to one of my authors, this was about 3 years ago, and we were talking about marketing, and I kept saying, you know, I was vice president of marketing for Thomas Nelson. So here's what we did to market the book. We did this, we did that. And he stopped me and he said, Larry, I'm not Thomas Nelson. And I said, yep, but you're going to be competing against them. And they're really, really good at what they do. So that's what you as an author is going to be up against. When that Ingram rep goes into Ingram, your book is competing against the presentation they just got from Thomas Nelson and Zondervan and Tyndale, and your book has to be better than those books. And that's what we help you do, is we pull on 34 years of industry experience and the time spent as vice president, president of two of the largest Christian book companies. And, you know, we help you craft a product. And I got to tell you, Nikki, it's a great question. We're not always the most popular person in your life. Why? We're not yes people. Okay. If you're looking for a yes person who's going to say, oh, Nikki, this is a wonderful manuscript. We love it. We're not going to change a word. Then you need to go call Amazon Create Space. But if you want a strategic partner that's going to say, hey, Nikki, this section here is a little rough, you know, we need to work on this. Or, hey, Nikki, have you considered getting a content edit on this book, you know, that we can help make this book better? If that's what you want, that's who we are. Okay, we're your strategic partner, and we're going to give your book the greatest odds of success. Can we turn your book into a New York Times bestseller? No, we would never promise you. There are companies out there. Go to the internet and you'll see things that say, pay us $10,000 and we'll get your book on the New York Times bestseller list. Folks, that's called a scam. You will pay them $10,000 and you will never hear from them again. Don't do it. Okay. We can't guarantee that your book will become a commercial success or will, you know, hit the New York Times bestseller list. What we can guarantee is we will help you craft the highest quality book that we can with the best cover, et cetera, that will turn it over to the largest sales force in the industry that will go out and present it to all of these bookstores, that your book will definitely now be available at Barnes & Noble. Will that buyer proactively buy a copy and put one copy of your book in every one of your stores? Have authors all the time. Larry, this is a really good book. This may shock you, but none of my authors has ever said they have a bad book. Okay. Larry, this is a really good book. Can't Barnes & Noble just take a chance and put one copy in every one of their stores? Let's look at the math. Barnes & Noble has 626 stores. Remember, they buy that $15, $16 book at half price. So they're paying about $8 a book, right? Multiply $8 a book times one copy in 600 stores. It would cost them almost $5,000 to experiment with your book, pick it up. How many new books are published in the United States every year? Over 1 million books. So why would Barnes & Noble just latch on to yours and say, I've never heard of Nikki Kozak, but this book looks like the book I've been waiting for all my life. Okay. You know, I've got to go and spend and put at risk $5,000 of my company's money on this book. And if it doesn't work, my boss is going to come in here and say, why did you spend $5,000 on this book from this totally unheard author? Okay. So I hate to depress you, you know, but that's what you're up against. And so as an unknown author, what you got to do is you got to go through the steps. And let me real quickly tell you this and how this process works. Okay. The buyer gets the presentation. They set it up. They set up every single book. that's presented to them by Ingram Publisher Services, just like they do every book coming to them from Thomas Nelson Zondervan. They set it up on their system. All right. If you're not set up on the system, you self-publish your book, and you're not now available at the distributors or whatever, and you pour a ton of money, you are the epitome of the marketing bent author. Okay, you're out there doing talk shows, you're doing interviews, you're getting magazine articles, you're doing getting out there with social media. You're doing everything you can to promote your book. Somebody walks into Barnes and Noble, looks around on the shelf, your book's not there, and they go over to the clerk and they say, "Hey, I'm looking for this book. I heard this lady named Nikki on the radio last night, and so I'm looking for her book." They go to their computer and they punch in the title of your book. And because your book has never been presented to the home office, they can't sell a book in that local Barnes and Noble that hasn't been approved by the home office. They wheel around and say, "Oops, I'm sorry, I don't see that book. What else can I sell you?" All that money that you spent on marketing your book has now been wasted. Why? Because they can't consummate the sale. They can't get your book. All right. Now you've gone through our system and their book is set up. All right. And so they say to the clerk, "Do you have this book?" First thing they do is they check to see if it's on the shelf. It's not. What do they do now? They shamelessly lie to you. They say, "Oh, rats, I just sold my last copy of Nikki's book." They're lying. They never had Nikki's book on the shelf, right? Okay. But it sounds better that way. "Oh, I just sold the last copy of that book. You're really smart to want to buy that book. But hold on, let me check my warehouse." Okay. Barnes & Noble has 4 warehouses around the country. Every one of them is located right beside an Ingram warehouse. Why? Because Ingram is their largest supplier. But trust me, your book is not in their warehouse. All right. When they say, "check my warehouse," that's code for Ingram. If it's a bookstore in Chicago, they punch up on the screen the inventory for Ingram's Fort Wayne, Indiana warehouse. For you guys, it would be their Chambersburg, Pennsylvania warehouse. Okay. And they punch it up and they see that there are 25 copies of your book sitting on the shelf at that Ingram warehouse. They whirl back around. They say, "Great news. We've got your book in the warehouse. If you'd like to special order it, I can have it back in the store in 24 to 48 hours. Ingram has next day delivery to 96% of the US population through their 5 strategically located warehouses. So the odds are good that bookstore can have that book back in their store 24 to 48 hours. So given that scenario, according to Barnes & Noble's own research, 96% of the time that buyer will say, "Yes, please special order that book." Why? Because ironically, they'll get it quicker by special ordering than going home and ordering it on Amazon. If they special order, they go back in the bookstore the next day and they get the book. If they order it on Amazon, they got to wait on average 2 to 3 days. So they say, "Yes, please special order." Now, Barnes & Noble has a policy called 1 to show and 1 to go. Every bookstore does this. It's just that Barnes & Noble has a fancy name for it. What that means is when that first person comes in and asks for that book, they'll special order. Maybe the second order, they'll special order. By the time the third person comes in, they're going, "Wow, this Nikki is really hustling. She's out there really getting the word out about her book." What they're authorized to do is to now order 2 copies of that book. The 1 to go is the one that's going back out with the special order. The 1 to show, "Congratulations, Nikki, your book is now on the shelf at that Barnes & Noble." And that's how you do it. That's how authors, first-time authors, become a success. Is a whole lot of hard work, marketing support, driving people into the stores. Bookstores worship the almighty dollar, okay? And so they're not going to pick up a book from a new author on the front end unless it's a celebrity or somebody has $1 million marketing plan. They might pick it up. But otherwise, all the folks on this site right now, they're going to set it up on their system and then they're going to do wait and see. Wait and see means watching the door, looking for people that Nikki drives into their store asking for the book. So long answer. Sorry about that. Only left 2 minutes for the next question, but that's the way it works. And that's what we help you do. All right. Looks like we've got time for maybe one more question.
Do you
I
have?
have-
All right, Phyllis, looks like I see you why don't you jump in?
Okay. Do you have a minimum number of pages on a book?
Only what is set by the printer. The printer, like a children's picture book, they can't print less than 16 to 18 pages. And we don't even encourage that because it doesn't, your book is not thick enough. It doesn't have a spine. Remember, 95% of the books in a bookstore are spine out. If your children's book doesn't have a spine, you're dead. Okay. So we recommend the minimum be 32 pages. For an adult trade book, we recommend generally at least 96 pages. Below 96, it's no longer a book, it's a booklet. Okay. And the bookstores won't carry. It takes as much room to put a 96-page book on the shelf as a 240-page book, but they make more money when they sell the 240-page book. All right. Maybe we can sneak one more in. We got 1 minute. Any other brave soul?
Well, I was just going to ask if, as like Nikki's book, I have a book on child loss, and I've shopped it around a bit, and all my responses are that the audience is not large enough.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you had a suggestion of how I could tweak it to make it marketable to a larger audience.
Two options very quickly. Number one is turn it into a self-help book and use your story as a self-help or how people can fix it. Number two, turn it into a novel. My parting shot here, I'm going to describe a book to you. It's a memoir about a young girl growing up. She's real friendly with her brother and her cousin. She loves her dad to death. She follows him to work all the time, has all kinds of misadventures down there in the South. You're probably sitting there going, that's the most boring book I think I've ever heard of. I would never buy that book. Folks, I just described To Kill a Mockingbird, and it's one of the best-selling books in the world. Why? Harper Lee knew that nobody could care less about her story, so she turned it into a novel. So that's the second suggestion, and that's what we would talk about in our session, would be that as a potential strategy. All right, our time is up. And so remember, if this sounds at all interesting, send me an email, Larry@Christian Book Services, and what we'll do is .com, and we will set up a free appointment. Generally takes about an hour to an hour and a half. Everything can be done over the phone, and you can ask more specific questions about how much does it cost, how long does it take, what is the process, how much money do I make, and we can handle all of those questions. All right. Well, thank you very much and have a good conference.
Thank you, Larry.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great, wasn't it?
All right.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Larry, do you have a time slot anywhere in these next 2 days? A serious one from another hybrid, where we're another hybrid custom.
A time slot during this Christian Writers Conference. I basically have made myself available for the next 2 days. I've got several people who've already signed up for individual appointments. So what you have to do, I can't set it up myself. What you do is you just go back through the website, the dashboard, and you can request an appointment.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure. All right, see everybody later.
Okay.
I would just like to say, don't forget to check your dashboard to see where you go next.